Hello, I'm Jorb. I love gear, and this is the Polyant Play. Yes, I know you're saying, Jorb, you're very late to showing off the Polyant Play, and I've had this one specifically actually for a while. Polyant sent it over with no strings attached, and I used it a few times, but I never felt like I had anything to say. The first few times I tried it, I didn't get it. I saw, now my buddy Mitch showed it off at KnobCon, and it sort of clicked. The sort of workflow flexibility, the generative stuff. I started to really see the appeal of it. And then the final push was in Superbooth this year. Mitch demonstrated some of the new changes that relate to MIDI, and then it immediately had a much clearer place in my personal workflow. I'm certainly paraphrasing, but while we were there at the booth, I complimented the changes. Not that much later, I get an email from Mitch from Polyant asking if I'd like to show off the 1.4 right around its release, and I said, of course. That's this video. It is sponsored by Polyant, so thank you very much for the opportunity to do that. But you're not going to watch necessarily what I would normally do with a Groovebox like this. That would probably be an hour with the play. There really is so much to do. What the video is going to be, I'm going to start from nothing and build to a jam that uses drums that are sampled, samples that I'm playing back from the play, and all the melodic stuff is from external MIDI gear, which is exactly how I've used MPCs for years, exactly how I wanted the Digitac to work, and it didn't work for me, and honestly the way the play would work into an actual live set of mine. So you're going to watch me take a relatively linear path, but every time I get to a point where there's other options, I'll branch off and show you, because that's one of the things the play does really, really well, is flexibility in workflow and flexibility in the way you approach. So anyway, yeah, if you're a subscriber, thanks for coming back. If you're a patron, really appreciate you. If you aren't either and want to support me another way, I'll have affiliate links below, and you can follow me on Instagram and all that stuff. So there you go. No more talking. Let's get on to the gear. Here we are on the table with the play. The way I've got everything plugged in, I've got just the one MIDI output going into a Type B adapter. Oops, I prefer Type A. And that is going to a regular DIN cable. That DIN cable is going to the input of this MIDI Solutions Quadra through, which just splits one MIDI into 4 outputs. And I'm using 3 of those to control the S1, the East Beast, and the Reface CP. Make sure my framing's all still good. I chose the S1 and the Reface because S1 and the Reface have built-in effects, and that's what you'll hear on each of them. East Beast is running through this digi-delay. But I'm actually going to show you some stuff with audio on the play first, and so I'm really just going to build towards one sort of jam, sort of example. Even if I am going to show you most of the stuff with MIDI, it's a little bit easier to show you how a lot of the things on play work with audio. And I'm not going to do a full deep dive. Other people have done that, and they're going to do a better job than me. But I just want us to have a sort of baseline by the time we get to talking about the MIDI. So the big like workflow descriptor, I guess, that made play click for me was the first time I heard somebody say pick and place. And so these 12 knobs, which are capacitive, you can see as I touch them, I see the parameters. You pick a sound that has these parameters on it, and you place it somewhere on the grid. So I'm going to start with a kick. I've already loaded some up. Let's do this. I've picked that sound, and I've placed it in the grid. And you hear it when I hit play. Okay, and one of the first things that confused me, I still have that same sound chosen. I can put that anywhere on the grid, and it'll still play. So there's definitely like a little bit of a loss of intuition with that. Like I'm used to one row being one sound, and there are definitely still reasons to leave or the same sound on the same row, but there's also so much flexibility that you get from having it be open like that. So for example, what if I just want to mute every other kick? If I have them on different lanes, it's that easy. It really is that easy. I am going to move them back up there, though. Okay, and then for the second row, let's say I want to do hi-hats. So for the hi-hats, I like it to vary. I like variation in it. There's a few ways you can do that. I'm using samples from The Count. I think this is Memory Bank 2. The golden and candy hats are my favorites of all time. So I'm going to pick golden hat 1, 3, 4, 2, 5, 1, 3, 2, okay? So I'm going to solo that hi-hat track. I like the way that sounded, and I want to repeat that whole phrase. You can hold shift and pick a whole section, copy, pick that whole new row, shift, paste. And there it goes. That is definitely one way to do it. I could also shift and delete that. And let's say if I pick Golden Hat 1, I put that everywhere. Right now, no variation at all. If I hold that whole row, pick randomize sample and folder, it works, but I'm getting a little bit too far. So I think if I move this sample to the middle here, and I randomize sample and folder, it'll go back and forth sort of a certain distance from the one that we had. I like that. And for randomize, you have to hit save to commit it, so I'm going to commit. I even like that open hat in the middle. But let's say I didn't like that open hat in the middle, and I wanted to replace it with something else. I believe it's this note here. Yeah, if I wanted to replace it with something else, I can hold on one till it flashes, and that will copy and paste it. And we don't have that open hat anymore. Another way of having variation, other things you can do with randomize, I can randomize the volume. So if I randomize, let's give it, say, 10% difference. Sort of thing that you would want to change for a hi-hat loop. But the way randomize works, it's a random selection and then you commit it. I like that. I'll commit to that. I like that. Okay, I want a snare, sample, folder, snares. Let's do 2 and 4. Pisces snare 1. Great. One more thing I want to show you while we're in here. I want to do another kick. So I'm going to hold on this, copy it to paste it, and I don't want this one to play every time. So if I shift and select it, go to chance. There's another way we can use chance. Once you get through all the percentages, you get these play 1, skip 1, play 2, skip 3, whatever. And so that's sort of, if I say skip 3, play it once, it'll run through this 3 times, not play this individual note, this individual hit, and on the 4th it'll play it once. There's 2, there's 3, and there's that. Let's do this. Great. I think that's enough of a like, oh, how does Jorb navigate this? Again, I'm not going to go into full detail. Other people have done a much better job. What I do want to focus on is the changes that have been in here since, I think it's 1.3 and 1.4 with changes to MIDI and how that works. So to get there, that's shift and then patterns here that swaps us between audio and MIDI. And now that we're in here, you can see, I don't see any of my audio tracks, but a lot of the navigation stuff works exactly the same. And if I hit play, it's still playing there in the background. I can mute it and leave and come back. All that works exactly the way we want it to. I'm going to leave it muted for now. But here in MIDI, all these parameters that were changing sort of sound attributes are now changing MIDI CCs. And some things are now different. So instead of volume and panning, we have velocity and note length, note and pitch bend. Instead of micro tuning, channel and program changes. So I'm going to start with jack channel 1, which will be the reface CP. There are tons of ways to put in notes once we're here in MIDI mode. I could do it exactly like, first and foremost, instead of a sample, you pick the MIDI channel, and it can be 1 through 16 via USB or off the jack. And then you could pick a note. I'm on channel 1 off of the jack. You can pick your note and place it, and then another one, and another one. Probably the worst way to do it. One thing that makes it a little faster, click on the encoder, you go to scales, scale on, let's just do C minor pentatonic, and we go back to our notes. It'll show you, if I have A selected, it'll adjust it to A sharp, for example. So already a little better. I don't have to scroll through chromatic notes I don't need. One of the new things in 1.4, if I hold view while I have something selected, we get this piano roll view. And I can just draw in whatever I want. Perfect. I set the scale to pentatonic, so those are the only notes I have access to. Back out of view, and if I want to change all of these, it shows you the tilde when you have different note values here, and you subtract something from it. So I've shifted everything an octave down. There it is. One thing to remember about the piano roll, right now, see this is monophonic. If I change any note in a given column, it'll just adjust that. But if I get out of here, let's just delete that, and say I want 4-note polyphony, I pick 4 tracks, then hold view, and I can do 4 notes at a time. So if I do totally random, but it's pentatonic, so it's not going to sound bad. Shift to select them all, and I can subtract the note. There you go. Like I said, kind of easy to get something that sounds totally bad. I keep forgetting while you're in the piano roll, you can't use the encoder to change what's on screen. A little annoying. I'm just so used to that. Let's extend the note length for all of them. And then I gotta find velocity. There it is. Make the whole thing softer. And come out. So there you go. And this is making me realize I really didn't need all that polyphony. Even still, one that might be even more exciting, and I'm going to do it down here, we have chord fills, whole chord fills. If I say that. And they're like chords and melodies. And they're, of course, locked to the scale like anything else. I want to start with this chord and then modify it. So if I hold Shift, pick them, copy, Shift, pick these, paste. Great, and I still have these picked. I can sort of cheat my way to making chords that way. Same thing, paste, if I subtract. Want to move these. There, so I've used the sort of generative fill to get my first chord, and then all my other ones are derivations of that. And we can, of course, use chance and randomize. Let's do, call it a 30% chance to random octave up. We have different voicings coming out of there. So here's my first like proper complaint. Humanize is a really handy thing, and I love that that's part of it, but chance doesn't have a way to be baked in like random does. And there's things in chance that I would love to be able to bake in, like humanize, like the random notes. What if I get a cycle I like, and I want to implement that, but I still want to use chance for like one of these, you know, play one, skip one things. You know what I'm saying? So I would love, I love the way chance works, but it's like I want more rows of it. Or I should be able to have the same options in randomize that I do in chance. Yeah, definitely worth complaining about. But that's where we got with our chords. And same thing now. I can even just knock everything down an octave again. And since it's locked to scale, and that's a good place, I think, to sort of pause and think about like the workflow flexibility I just showed you. There are certain people who would use none of the examples that I gave for putting in notes. There are certain people who would use them all. And there's some people who would use a totally different combination to what I found useful. And that really is a big part of what makes the play so cool to me, is there's like this open-endedness to the workflow, in part because the ways rows work, in part because the way you know, these 12 parameters are stored, randomized chance, so many things come together to make play's workflow like radically flexible. And so now that I've got these chords started, I'm going to show you the way I think like, you know, when people see. So now the way I really, really want to work with the piano roll and everything, I have these notes. I want to take these chords and use those to sort of make an arpeggio for the S1 and make a bass line for the East Beast. So I'm just literally going to copy this row and I'll put it up top. And then the first thing I'll do is change the jack to 4 and I'll solo it. Which will be the East Beast, and then I'm going to change the note. Down there, I'm actually going to take all the chants off. Do one earlier. Just kidding, I want to copy it. Great, and now what I really hear myself wanting is variation beyond 16 here, and there's another opportunity for the play to have tons of flexibility. So first and foremost, I could literally go to a second variation. So you see, I've picked a variation on this first row. And now I have 16 variations I can choose from. And so the first thing I'm going to do is copy these, and then I'll go to variation, 2, turn off of variation, shift, pick that same range, and paste. And then I'm going to change the notes, I don't know, up by 4. Okay. There's our first variation. I can click on the second one. And they'll play. And we'll go back to the first one. That's great if I want to manually shift between my variations. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to copy everything I have in the second one. I'm going to copy everything I have in the second one, return to the first, and I'm going to set the length for this first track to 32. I could do that here, or if I leave it back at 16, I could shift and hit that second group there. It'll work, and now remember I've got copied. I can paste it there. So now instead of having variations, watch the orange marker on this first row. You don't see it because it's on this second group 16. Wonderful. I want to add something for the S1. Why don't we do sort of generative fill again? Back to chords, just see what we get. That's the sort of thing I was thinking. Oops, I don't want to change that too. Honestly, so far really, really great. I'm going to do the same thing I did for our East Beast row, our bass line. I'm going to add a second row 16. And I have it copied. Go here and paste. Copy. Pick these 3, and then I need to shift, paste, and then what did I do? I shifted it up by 3. Crazy stuff. Remember I had drums? And back. Can mute certain tracks. All without having to do like very, very little manual stuff. Great, that actually turned out super, super good. Now it really is like, oh crap, what haven't I shown you? There are different play modes here. So if I go to let's solo these parts. So I'm soloing just these 3 notes that are going to the S1. And I want this to get a little messier. So you see the play mode by default on everything is going to be forward. I'm going to change the second one to reverse. Or which is great. And then what if I move everything one to the right or one to the left? Great. How about on this bottom row? I'll change the play mode to Funkster. Some of them are random. I really don't know what these mean. And I actually don't believe they're explicitly written out anywhere. Some of them seem random, some of them do not. Like I haven't hit a single... Yeah, if I leave it on Reorganizer, it's like I never hit anything. Is there not down and back? Is there not a... I'm so surprised to see that there's not a forward and then reverse. So these are cool, but... they're not really doing what anybody would expect them to. And they definitely can recontextualize this part, but anyway. Man, it really is like, oh, what else I haven't shown you? One thing I definitely haven't shown you, which is very, very cool. If you have a MIDI CC enabled synth, which the S1 is totally MIDI CC controllable, I can change the parameters on the fly. So, filter cutoff and resonance are really easy here. And I can even live record that. Yeah, there you go. There's my live recording included in there. To clear the live recording while I haven't selected, if you double tap those parameters, and I can go back to controlling it on the keyboard, or on the synth rather. But to be able to bake that into songs, changes like that, is really, really rad. There you go. That was totally not planned. I didn't know any of what I was going to do. But I'm pretty happy with where this ended up. But I'm pretty happy with where this ended up, considering the way I just like sketched it out. There are definitely other things I could do. Of note, I've already used up all my polyphony. There are certainly ways around that. So these chord channels, I could set up for a single trigger a chord, and then it would take up just a single row, but I don't really know what these chords are. And for me, it's so much more engaging to have that note data here to play around and sort of seed all the other ideas like the bass line and bringing it out to be my arpeggio or whatever. The option to do that is worth it. The option to do that is sort of the trade-off for me. If I really wanted to, I'm sure I could figure out how those chords translated to something in there. But regardless, and same thing, that same idea, saving polyphony, I could take this row and move it up here, and this row and move it up here, and set up the envelope on the S1 in a way that it wouldn't sound much, if any, different at all, and save 2 more rows of polyphony that way. But of course, I still have everything on the audio track, just not more MIDI tracks. I have another small complaint. I'm going to throw it in here. I wish that I could have half of my pad grid on audio and half of my pad grid on MIDI. I know that like becomes a bit of a thing as far as like what the knobs get to do in a given moment and what you display to the user at a given moment. but the ability to mute and solo tracks that are both in audio or in MIDI would be really, really, really handy. Or maybe a mixer view with mutes and solos, something off of Perform, where now our vertical columns become the different rows from audio or MIDI. Regardless, that's all. So I think it's a little bit limiting as far as polyphony is concerned, but there are tons of workflow ways around it. And that's sort of like the big conclusion I want to draw. The Play has one of the most, like, I don't even know the right way to say it. There's like multitudinous workflows. There are a million ways to approach it, and they'll all work, and they'll all be fast, and they'll all be fun. And nothing else I've ever seen or worked with really behaves that way. And now that it has better MIDI implementation, it's all that more exciting to somebody like me who likes to work sequencing external MIDI more than anything else. And as far as using this for drums, I think it does a great job. I still truly believe that a pad grid is the best way to visualize and understand drum patterns. It just makes too much sense, you know what I mean, to visualize rhythms in that way. So there you go. I definitely didn't show you everything, but I think I gave you a pretty good look at how fun and sort of flexible the Play can be, especially now working with MIDI. So there you go. That's all I got to say. Polyand, thanks again. Mitch, thanks again. My name's Jorb. I love gear. That really does include the Polyand Play. Thanks for watching. Cheers and so long.